Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Google Analytics for Higher Ed, 5 Things You Need to Know by Converge Consulting. A few things to take care of before we start. We do have a hashtag to use, and it's hashtag Analytics Higher Ed. Questions will all be taken at the end, and there will be a recording available. First off, for introductions, I'm Michael Sapiro, Senior Digital Strategist.
And I'm Becky Vardaman, also Senior Digital Strategist here at Converge.
And we are going to be covering the 5 things you need to know. So the first will be, yes, you absolutely need to be using Google Analytics. And I think you all know that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The second is, setup can be somewhat complicated. Third, your goal should be goals. Traffic sources matters. Fourth, and last, customize.
Great, so we have a lot of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to jump right in. So number one, yes, you really do need Google Analytics. Like Michael said, most of you are probably already in this camp, right? Because you signed up to take this up. However, you likely have some holdups around your institution. So we want to arm you with some really logical points to help win them over to the side. So first of all, data really is pretty much better than everything else when it comes to making decisions around your marketing. Many of you have probably made changes to your website based on, 1 or 2 bad emails from somebody. Maybe a higher-up's wife had a terrible user experience on your website and you hear about it, or even your own assumptions about what people are doing on your website. With Google Analytics, you have real data to support decisions, which will help you make a better website. So basically, your users won't get lost. You won't have them confused about what you want them to do, like this example. These are the results of the 2012 Noel Levitt E-Expectations report. High school students, juniors and seniors were asked, how important is the web in evaluation of an institution? 52% said that the web played at least a significant role, with only 2 or 3% saying that it played little or no role at all. Only 2 or 3% said little or no role. So clearly, you guys know this. You know your website is really important, but here's a really good chunk of stats to take with you to make that case to other people in your institution. So why do you have a website? What are your goals? Google Analytics lets you set up digital goals that mirror your institutional objectives. And this gives you real data and trends to measure against. So you can get really deep insights about your most sites or your traffic that's most valuable to your institution. Also, you don't hear from everybody that you've turned off. Have you ever been on a bad date? Sometimes the easiest way to forget about it and pretend that it didn't happen is to just delete that person's phone number and pretend that it never happened at all, right? And you certainly did not send them a detailed email about how they could improve. Well, the same thing happens with your website. Most of the time, people just don't call you back if they didn't like the experience that they had. And Google Analytics gives us honest, real feedback about that user's activity. So you kind of circumvent that activity. You can see what happened even if they don't tell you what you did wrong. Google Analytics is really a process, not a task. This is really important to remember. You wouldn't try to lose weight by just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, would you? No, you shouldn't try to improve your website that way either. Google Analytics is not really a one-and-done task. It's a continuous process of improvement. So even if you currently have Google Analytics on your website, make sure that you have a process in place so that you're constantly measuring, analyzing, and making changes to try to make your website as good as possible. So here's some homework. Go have this conversation. Is our website important, Michael?
Well, yes, Becky, of course.
How much time, money, and energy do we currently spend on our website?
So much. Look at this project timeline, this contract, and these fees.
So wouldn't our time, money, and energy be better spent if we had a clear digital goals and data to support our marketing decisions?
Of course, but how?
Well, Google Analytics, a free tool, can help.
You deserve a raise and a closer parking spot.
Hopefully that'll happen to you. So let's dive into some of that how that we just talked about. So our next point here is that really Google Analytics setup can be kind of complicated, especially for higher ed. So we're going to give you some tools and some tips to make your data as good as possible. In a perfect world, Google Analytics is really simple. You just take this little snippet of code that they give you and you go put it out on every page of your website, right? Higher education is not necessarily a perfect world when it comes to websites. It can be a bit of a zoo. So first of all, our websites that we work in are some of the oldest in any industry, right? The internet was actually created at a higher education institution. So we have some of the oldest and the most longevity. We also have sometimes decentralized management of it, so you end up with subdomains popping up all over the place, or different websites altogether popping up all over the place. So it's about kind of wrestling that gorilla and getting it down into a manageable workflow. So some things to consider as you're setting up your analytics. Account structure, domains, subdomains, self-referrals, and then universal analytics. First things first, the anatomy of a URL. So we're all talking about the same stuff. That blue part there, the www, is what I'm going to talk about when I'm talking about subdomains. Sometimes you'll see an alumni dot, sometimes an admissions dot, but anything that comes before that root domain is what I mean when I say subdomain. The root domain basically is everything that comes right before the .edu. So those are the two most important pieces. And a note about account structure in Google Analytics as we're kind of tackling this. Google Analytics has accounts, which is that top level, that big blue box. Underneath that, you have your green properties. So a property should be something like a website, a mobile app. They should be kind of those big overarching pieces. And then the views are just slices underneath that you can maybe look at just a subdomain or just a certain set of pages, but basically they're little slices of your data. Notice here, though, particularly that user permissions can be assigned at any level. So no more making 25 properties just to give people different access, okay? You can set user permissions at any level. So root domains. Oops, yep, root domains. A lot of times you'll end up with a microsite that maybe has a completely different URL from your website. We see this a ton with athletic sites. We see it very frequently with admission sites. We see it a lot with alumni sites as well. So start thinking about, as we're going through this process, which you have out there already that you know exists. And then there's subdomains. We also need to talk about subdomains. Think of your university, the whole campus. Think of that as the top level property. Remember that those different boxes we were looking at? So think of that as your property. Each building on campus is a subdomain. So the reason that we want to make sure we're tracking these really carefully is because the information that you want to know is how do people get to campus in the first place, right? You're much more interested in how people got to campus instead of how people moved from biology to chemistry buildings. So we'll want to make sure that you're tracking all of your subdomains in the same property. We actually talk a ton about this process in a little bit more detail in an upcoming FAC. So one of the tools that we use to do this is we make a map. You go out and you find all of your domains and all of your subdomains, and you make a list. We've seen hundreds before, so don't be discouraged if you see a whole bunch. Then we basically walk through this quick little test. Is it currently in analytics? If it is, which account is it tracked under? Is it currently being used? A lot of the time you'll find out that, oh my gosh, we haven't even used this since, 1999, so maybe we can just redirect it. If it is being used, what's the purpose of it? And then we need to decide if we want to include it on campus in our main property, if we want it to be a separate campus, a different property, or if we just want to redirect it to real one. And then we also have an option here to make notes if we want to create a view specific to one little section of the site. So how do you find all your domains and subdomains? A really good IT department should be able to help you out here. They should hopefully have a list, and then maybe even be able to go look at servers and see what exists on the campus. But most people don't have an entire list of these. So a couple of tools you can use. To look for domains that you're currently tracking, there's this nice little custom report that basically shows the host name of all the different things that you're currently tracking. So this will give you a nice list of what's going on currently on your website. This is an example of some stuff from our website before we made some fixes. So we see that Eventbrite's out there. We have a web subdomain, all of these different things you can pull from this report. And then you also probably want to get some insight into things that you're not tracking, right? So Moz has a free tool. It's 30 days for free, and that's plenty of time to go out and do your initial crawl. Moz is a tool that goes out and pretends to be Google and basically crawls from link to link to link on your website and makes a record of them. So while this is technically it's an SEO tool to start with, it's really, really useful in this kind of mapping exercise as well to find some things that maybe you didn't know were out there. So this is a way that you can look for things that didn't exist before. So let's talk quickly about self-referrals. Self-referrals are kind of the symptom a lot of times of a bad setup in the first place. You see this and it's an indicator that something might not be quite right. So go check and see if you have them. Under the acquisition tab, go look under all referrals, and you see this is again our site that we purposely have some things kind of screwed up on so that we can have some of these examples. And you can see that Converge Consulting is actually referring traffic to our site. That's bad. The reason that that's so bad is because all of those 213 people that came to our site, we don't know where they really came from now, because somewhere along the line, the referral information is getting overwritten as ourselves. So it's really important to fill in those big black holes in your data. Where do self-referrals come from? A lot of the time in higher ed, we see the first one or the second one, the two circles there. The tracking code is missing or not working, or else we have some kind of inconsistent tracking code configuration. Mobile subdomains, redirects, iframes, and flash tracking can also contribute to this, but really the first two are the ones that we see the most frequently. So here's an example. If the code's missing or not working, something you can use, a tool to help you understand what's going on here, is go out and download this Google Tag Assistant plugin for Chrome. And basically it'll be on every page of your website, every page of everybody's website if you want to be a snoop and see what kind of code they have. And you click on this little button and it'll pull down and tell you the Google Analytics code that's on and if it has any errors in it. So that's a really helpful tool. There's also a filter that will help in restoring the full referral path. So on a test view of your site, go ahead and throw this filter on, and this will give you a really good understanding of which pages referring the information to your site are causing the problem. This helps with troubleshooting. There's also a custom report that you can add that, again, these are things that are available for download. We'll even throw them up on the recording of this if you guys want to go and get them. There's a referral path and landing page report that basically this tells you the opposite. So the landing pages on your website, that the people that are causing the self-referrals are landing. So you can look at it both from the previous version, seeing where the referral traffic is causing self-referrals, and then which landing pages are getting those self-referrals. So you can really narrow down where the problem is. A lot of times we'll see that this is between like one or two specific subdomains, like maybe athletics is causing the problem, or a lot of times a third-party calendar app will cause the problem. Inconsistent tracking code configuration typically is not having the subdomain code edited correctly. So this goes if you're in asynchronous. So remember that. Most of the stuff we're talking about is asynchronous when it comes to this specific code. So an example is if you're out there shopping and you go to a product page and then you jump off to another basket.example.com shopping cart and you don't have that call for the subdomain incorporated. It looks like this. Basically, the incorrect one is at the top, and you see the shopping cart page is missing a couple of lines of code. Basically, you just want to make sure that every subdomain you're tracking together, or every building on campus, has this set domain as the main, your main root domain there. And again, this is for asynchronous, and I guess synchronous too. We'll talk more about how universal can help here. Another great filter that you can use to help understand what's going on with your subdomains is this differentiate subdomains or show subdomains, which basically takes your reporting from the view on the left side to the view on the right side. So it gives you all the full subdomains of what you're looking at, which can be really, really helpful just to start identifying if you have any problems here. So back to subdomains. Some of the stuff we talked about in self-referrals will get sorted out tremendously just by doing this subdomain and domain exercise. And really, we're going to talk about universal analytics and how we want you all to move to that. This is going to provide a map for how this can really be laid out and which pages you need to put code on. So don't fear. A lot of what we just talked about seems like it's pretty complicated and there's a lot going on there. There's a solution. And that solution is universal analytics. So if you haven't heard about Universal Analytics yet, it's basically the latest version of the code. You know, we had traditional, we moved to asynchronous, and now we're moving on to universal. It's actually a different type of code, and you need to put different code on your site to be able to work it. But basically, everything going forward is going to be universal. So what's new? There's a new measurement protocol, which allows for offline conversion imports, server-side sessionization, custom dimensions and dimension widening, and cost data imports. That's a lot of stuff. But basically what it means is that Google is helping you to be able to import your own data in lots of different ways into the tool, which means things like points of sale. If you have recruiters calling and talking to students, you can also tie that into the student in analytics. There's some really, really, really cool things that can be done here. And also it's giving you more ready access within the actual tool of analytics without having to get into the code to some really cool customization. So that being said, how does it help with your subdomain issue? Basically, remember that little snippet of code we looked at where you had to add a couple more lines? You do not need to do that if you're using your Universal Analytics. Anything you put out there that you put that Universal Analytics on is going to track together, which is fantastic. There's also a tool called the Referral Exclusion List, which basically, if you do end up with some of those self-referrals, you'll be able to exclude them right within the tool. Remember I said sometimes you have to code it out now. They're giving you the opportunity to do this right here within the tool. So marketing people like you and I can easily add those things that we don't want our own domain name to come through as a referral. Pretty cool, right? So takeaways from Universal. It's coming. You need to move. You need to get onto it. In fact, we're even reading rumors that this summer they're probably going to transition people whether you're ready or not. So I would make it a goal by the end of the spring semester to really take a deep look at Universal and be the one in charge of transitioning. There's some really, really amazing tools that are going to be released. Some of them already are released, so stay tuned to how people are using these to do some really fantastic things. We also see, really we get the question a lot from people, so should we switch? Are we ready to switch? The things to consider there. All the customizations you've done on your website. So if you have a lot of events out there, or if you're using e-commerce or any of those sorts of things, the on-page code, those are all going to have to be updated and changed. But really at this point, you're going to have to do it anyway. So I would start working on that process. And there's also something called the Upgrade Center. If you've been in analytics very recently, you probably see that they're kind of pushing you to move your current setup over to Universal. I think that you can do both at the same time, or you can go through the Upgrade Center, and that really depends on some of the goals that you have with your institution, whether you feel ready to drop a whole nother set of code on, or whether you just want to continue with the history that you have. I think that there's a case for both.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. This is Michael again, and we're going to talk about how your goal should be goals. So let's take a look at the three different kinds of visitors that would come to your website. In the bottom corner of your screen, looking down, depressed at a cell phone, is a typical teenager thinking about entering college. That would be maybe a traditional student. Then opposite, you've got maybe a non-traditional student who's trying to figure out, what the heck am I doing with my life? And then at the top, you've got some very successful young alumni. So each one of these people is going to have to be responded to with your website. So you're going to want to set up goals for all of them, because they all have very different needs. So remember, the purpose of your website is to accomplish things, accomplish goals. So when you're thinking about these alumni, maybe they'd be more interested in something like an event or maybe a fundraising appeal, whereas maybe your traditional student would want to come and plan a visit and see the campus or request info. And maybe non-traditionals would want to figure out how previous transfer credits could work. So each of these different kinds of examples have a different purpose. So when you're thinking about this, there's kind of a framework you can use to get clarity. And so this is a great kind of tool that you can run through. So you run through business objectives, website goals, KPIs, targets, and segments. And you can put those all together and get real clarity about your website. So let's talk about the different types of goals. Well, the first would be a URL destination. And that's probably the most typical that we see, where something like a thank you page would count as a URL destination goal. Another one would be time on site. So when a visitor who would spend maybe 5 minutes on your site could possibly be worth more than a visitor who came for 15 seconds and didn't do much. So, so you want to really understand if that time, if the pages that they're on are worth spending time on, and if so, that's an indicator that they're a pretty good prospect. Same with page depth or page visits, where you see how many pages they visit on a site. Of course, more pages indicates more interest. And then there's events, which are kind of predefined actions or just custom, what you like to track on your page. We can talk more about that a little bit later. So let's look at this example. A page has 2,000 views, 70% returning visitors, an 80% bounce rate, and 62% conversion rate. Would this be a good or bad? Well, the 2,000 page views is helpful, 70% returning visitors is nice, 80% bounce rate also tells you a little bit about it, but the biggest thing you want to concentrate on is conversion rate. Is it driving conversions? That's really a great indicator of success for a page. Back to Becky.
So traffic sources in higher ed really, really matter. Number 4. So first of all, traffic sources have their whole own tab in Google Analytics. That's how important they are. They call it acquisition. So if you go out and look at your acquisition tab and just click on the all traffic, that's a good place to start. You get a source and a medium of where people are coming from when they come to your website. Remember we were talking about the subdomains and tracking everything at the campus and wanting to know how people got to your campus, not necessarily how they got to the biology building. This is exactly the type of information we want to look at. So there's different types of traffic. Here's some of the most important ones. Direct traffic. That's when somebody comes directly to your website. They've either typed in the URL, maybe they have it bookmarked. Sometimes you will also see some inflation here because if something's broken along the line, Google dumps all of the broken, I don't know where you came from, into the direct bucket. Search engines. So we'll see organic search traffic come through. By default, Google tracks over 20 different search engines. Google, at least in our country, is by far the most popular. So usually the top 2 traffic sources you'll see is direct and Google organic. Basically, that means somebody went to a search engine, typed in something, and clicked on it and got to your website. Kind of an X factor in that world is if you guys use the Chrome browser, which a lot of us do, and you know that if you type just whatever you want into the URL bar, it's actually doing a Google search. So keep that in mind, that some of that direct traffic is actually coming through the search traffic. Then there's referrals. This is a link that appears on another website driving to your website. This is great because you oftentimes want to know, who's promoting you, where you're getting these links from. It's really important for an SEO perspective as well. So this referral traffic is great to have a good view into. And then there's campaigns. Campaigns are awesome because they're custom. You decide what they are. So how you do that is with campaign tracking. Has anybody ever seen one of these big, long URLs with all the parameters at the end of it? And you probably thought to yourself, I'm getting tracked. Well, you were. Basically, what that does is you're manually overwriting information to Google Analytics that says, I want the source to be this, the medium to be this, and I'm going to give this a campaign name, which is really, really useful if you're doing things like email campaigns or social media. A common mistake with this is people will try to use campaign tracking on their own website, on like banner ads or something that goes to another page on their website because they want to know how many people have been clicking on this button that we bought over on the home page. Don't do that. The reason you don't want to do that is because you're basically, remember I said you're forcing it to overwrite the source information. So if that person came from Facebook in the first place and then clicked on your banner ad, now the rest of the conversion data and everything else we're looking at on that visit is now from that banner on your homepage, and you lose the actual real referral information. So this is primarily for social media, email, if you have an RSS feed, anything that's out in the world linking back to your website, okay? So why do traffic sources matter so much to higher education? Why is it worth going through all the trouble of campaign tracking, making sure your referrals are clean, all of these things? Well, first of all, from a marketing perspective, it's really important for us to know which traffic sources are converting best on our goals. We want to know if our email is converting better than Facebook, better than those ads that we're spending money on AdWords. Really, you want to understand where you're successful so that you can try to increase that type of traffic, right? So then you also can get at what rate and over time. So maybe you'll notice that you didn't have a very good set of ads out on Facebook initially, but this month you've got it rewrite, and now all of a sudden the traffic is converting much better. So there's different ways that you can use that strategically. If you're using, if you're spending money on something, you sure as heck better be tracking it, right? So any traffic source that you're spending a significant amount of money on or a significant amount of time on, and those of you with a social media person on staff is probably jumping up and down right now saying, yes, yes, that's me. I want to be able to prove that my social media is contributing to the goals on our website. And then also you might come across some unexpected trends that you can really capitalize on, and you might notice that emails that are sent on Tuesdays have a higher conversion rate on your website goals than some that are sent on Saturdays, even if the click-through rate is there. So it's really important to look at those things and really, this is so paramount to understanding how you can make better marketing decisions.
Our last point is you should customize. You should make it your own. So one of the best ways to do that is by events. We talked a little bit about that just a few minutes ago, but here's some examples of things you could track with events. You could track social media shares, so you can connect people to your social media pages. You can track if a person watches a video, even how long they watched that video. If you have some sliders on your page, you can track which pictures and images they're flipping through. It's really up to you what you want to do. It's almost limitless. So here's an example of some of the code for event tracking. And maybe the main thing to know about that is the event category and action parameters. You can kind of use those in any way you like to organize it according to your needs. Another great feature to kind of make Google Analytics your own is utilizing dashboards. And what a dashboard is a very at-a-glance view of the most important data that you want to see right away. So it's just kind of a snapshot. And it's very useful with collaboration, maybe outside of your department, to people that aren't so familiar with website issues. So one of the great ways that you can share outside of your department, or maybe with the VP or maybe with a program chair, would be to just have an email report set out. You can automate that, and you can give them all the stats they're looking for. You can also export PDFs for ready sharing and printing as well. So where do you start with the dashboard? We'll start, first of all, with your goals. You want to make a specific view of that. So request information, maybe applications, just a snapshot of that. It's probably the most useful and the most common. You can also just swap out, if you're spending hours just schlepping through all that information and you want to have a quick solution to save yourself time, we'll replace all of that reporting you're currently doing with the dashboard. Get it all neat and tidy together. Another really useful thing is when you have content-heavy sections of your site, like blogs, news, or whatever, you can really get great information about how people are engaging with that content and put it in a dashboard. And you could even bring on content contributors and show them that so you can monitor what's working and what's not. Another great tool for marketing departments is tracking campaigns. Becky talked a little bit about that, about URL tracking parameters. You can certainly use that and track your latest initiatives and prove worth to whomever you need to contact about that. And specific traffic sources like social media, you can see how that's performing versus PPC or maybe organic or referrals. You can really see what works best for you and find where your efforts should be allocated. And then another neat one is to kind of create dashboards about the inbound marketing process, so the track, convert, and delight, and set together data for each of those different aspects of it.
All right, so we're going to take questions in just a few minutes. So start thinking of the questions that you have for us to enter into the chat. Today we talked about these 5 top things that you need to know. Hopefully we've given you some ammunition to go in and make the case for Google Analytics and understand that you really need to be able to dig into this data deeper. We've talked a lot about setup and how it can be complicated, and really hopefully given you guys some tools to attack that in a way that is pretty straightforward and will set you up for the most success and the most quality data. We talked about the importance of goals and how really they should represent why you have a website for each audience. Traffic sources and how that's one of the key metrics in order to really make good decisions about marketing. And then customizations like events and dashboards, things that you can do to get that next level of data and understand what's going on in your website. This is Google Analytics month here at Converge Consulting. So we're doing blog posts all month. We're doing Friday after class videos, which we're calling FACs. Basically short little videos diving into some of these issues a little bit more in depth. With the webinar right now, we have a workshop in 2 weeks in sunny San Diego, and we have a white paper coming up as well. So Google Analytics crazy in the month of February here at Converge. So if you have questions, if there are things that we didn't follow up on in depth enough, let us know, and we can feature those in some of the other events as well. Our next webinar coming up is the Challenge Your Institutional Website, the Solution, a Customer-Focused Microsite with Brenda Harms. If any of you have joined us for one of Brenda's webinars, they're always a riot and they're so much fun, and she does a great job with them. But this month, or next month rather, on March 6th, she's going to be talking about some of those primary audiences and how we can really reach those people without necessarily doing an entire website overhaul. Great. So we're here to take your questions. We're looking for them in the chat. And let us know what kind of issues you're seeing at your institution and anything you'd like further clarification on. We went through a ton of stuff pretty quickly because we wanted to make sure we covered everything. So if you've got follow-up questions, now's the time to ask. Oh, well, that's a very lovely question. The first question we got there is, what services Converge Consulting provide to help with analytics? Thank you. I promise we didn't plan that one. We help with the full process of analytics. A lot of times we'll come in when a website is just being redesigned, and we'll help you understand how your current data can help you make decisions on your new website. But we also come in and do an overhaul and make sure that everything's set up correctly, get you guys set up with goals and dashboards. So a lot of the stuff we just talked about. Oh, right, and all of the stuff that we're talking about will be available out on convergeconsulting.org, our website. And, you know, in addition to that, we're sending you guys all an email, everybody who is on the registration here, once this is available and live, the recording. So there'll be a link out there as well. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about using campaigns to track page ads and why that's not a good thing. So in most cases, that ad is, let's use an example of, we have a nice banner ad that's created that is to drive students to come look at our virtual tour. We do this a lot. And we spend some money on that virtual tour, so we really want to understand what's going on with that virtual tour banner. In addition to that, maybe we've also had some conversations about our homepage and whether or not these things are really important or not. And so we're trying to prioritize what's on our homepage based on user use. So a lot of people think, okay, well, we'll add this little parameter code on here, and then we'll understand how many people are clicking on it. So you're getting that knowledge, right? You're going to understand how many people clicked on that banner, but what you're losing is, let's use this case. I sent Michael an email. I said, Michael, come to my website and check out my virtual tour. So Michael clicks on that link, and he comes to my website, and so Google Analytics thinks, oh, here's this guy, and he came from an email, right? It knows that, right, from the traffic sources. As soon as he clicks on that banner to visit the virtual tour, all of that email information just got overwritten. He could have come from organic, he could have come directly, anything, no idea. So that's what you're losing. You're losing that understanding that that email helped drive that conversion of maybe watching that virtual tour and doing that. The thing is, you're probably saying, well, crap, I want to know how many people clicked on that banner. How do I track it? Do you remember when we talked about events and Michael showed you that code that you can put in those 3 different parameters? That's a perfect use case for event tracking. You can put that right into the code of your site, and it doesn't do anything to your referral sources. So then you'll still have that understanding. Oh, okay. So a very common question. We deal with this. I would say probably 99% of the clients that we work with have this problem. An application that is hosted off-site, right? So a Common App or something in Banner. Basically, you're leaving your website and going off to a completely different website hosted on another platform. Oh boy. So this is another really good use case for using events. Basically, Google Analytics understands everything that's happening within your quote-unquote campus, right? That's like sending them across the street to the police department to fill out their application form. So what we can do is we can say at least we know that they've clicked on this button, which if we can put the event tracking around that button and count that as a goal conversion, because we know that they have the intent of clicking on that button and going and filling out the form. Best case scenario, and I'd love if anybody's had this work, shout it out in the chat. But best case scenario is working with that third party and getting your analytics code on that actual form itself, which then you can build a funnel and you can understand where people are dropping off. So that's really, really helpful in understanding, okay, my form is too long, they're dropping off when they have to give me their social security number, they don't like the login. You can get a lot more in-depth information into that. But in order to have that level of analytics, you have to have your Google Analytics code on the web page that the form is on. So that might be a handshake and a little bit of work trying to get that done. But if you can, it's definitely worthwhile. Okay. What other questions? Do you want to take one?
Yeah. Someone asked, we are redoing our website. What information can we use prior to the redesign to inform it? That's a great question, and there's a lot of things you can use from Google Analytics to inform that process. I think to start, you want to look at what pages are being used. There's a lot of pages out there that maybe aren't necessary on every high-tech website. So look at that. Maybe look at how people are engaging with those pages. We talked a little bit about page depth and page time, and see if it makes sense. Are people supposed to be spending 5 minutes on a page that's not content heavy? That could be an issue with it. They're confused and trying to decide where to go on the website. If page depth is just unnecessarily long, that could also be an indicator that, okay, well, we don't have this laid out the best. People are going to 15 pages where it should be a 2-click to find out about our ASN program, for example, or something. So those are things off the top of my head. Becky, do you have any others that you'd rope in?
Yeah, definitely. Those things are very helpful. Sometimes I also like to drill down into one just specific section and make a dashboard to just look at the admissions pages or just look at the alumni pages and seeing what the most popular pages are and where the content really should, not only for your top level navigation, but some things that can kind of give you information about what maybe on those sub-navs would be helpful as well. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff we can dig into there. I have a question on traffic sources. What's a direct none traffic source? Direct none just is basically you're looking at the source and the medium together. So because it's direct, there isn't a median. So it's that direct traffic bucket, meaning they came directly to your website and there's no median. This is a great question, and it can be really confusing also with the search organic not provided. So that's something that we're seeing just skyrocket because of some changes Google made in, I think, about November and October of last year, that basically they're providing a lot less information from Google Search to Google Analytics about the keywords people are using. So if you're seeing both not provide, oh, actually someone else is asking that question too. Perfect. So if you're seeing not provided come through as the #1 keyword, it's basically a privacy thing from Google, and you are not alone. Pretty much every website out there in the entire world, not provided is the #1. There are some things you can do to still get some keyword information. Make sure you have your webmaster tools linked and go look at your SEO report. That will give you some of the keywords that you've showed up for in search. So if someone searches best college ever, it means you showed up on the page. Even if they didn't click on your link, you'll have that visibility. So there's definitely some good stuff to look at there. What else?
Here's one. Somebody wants to know how to tag their links with paid search when they're not using Google AdWords. That's a good question.
Perfect, yeah.
So as you know, Google AdWords, you can set it to auto tagging, so that information will just be fed into your analytics system when you're monitoring it. But maybe you're using Bing. So this would be how are you able to track that? Well, you want to make sure, first of all, that in the medium, it's CPC, that's lowercase. That's going to mark it as a paid campaign. You're also going to want to put in the source Bing, for example. And then you would also want to put in the name of your campaign. So that's the way to work around it. It's very simple. Just using the URL tagger. You can use Google's, they have their own tool for that. Just plug that in and you'll be able to see how those are performing.
Yep, absolutely. We have a question here about tracking things like email newsletters and digital invitations to alumni events, working in alumni relations and trying to gauge alumni engagement using analytics. So is there a way to merge that analytic information from various sources? So basically, if you're tagging all of those different sources, I'm guessing that your digital invitations and your email newsletters are both email, right? So you'll want to make sure that you're tagging those as a medium of email, and then they'll all come in together and you can see what's going on from an email perspective. And then you'll also want to make sure that you're tagging them differently, whether it's a newsletter or whether it's that digital invitation. So it'll give you a nice view of the different types of emails you're sending, and then you can even get down to the level of tagging the specific link on that email so you know which button they clicked on. So there's really a lot of different ways that you can, by default, campaign tagging will merge all of those different sources together. And that's why it's important, like Michael said, using the lowercase CPC or email, all lowercase and then batch, so that you have that nice kind of merged roll-up reporting. All right. Still taking questions if anyone has more. Sorry, we're reading that.
All right. Keep passing those through.
Let's talk a little bit about benchmarking. We just got a question about benchmarking in higher ed. We use this question all the time because we work with a lot of different schools, and people want to know, well, is that good? Oh, well, we got this nice conversion rate. Is that pretty good? Well, the thing is, higher ed is, first of all, you saw how complicated the setup is, right? And you saw how higher ed is kind of a zoo with that big, awesome gorilla. So first of all, we have to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples if we're going to look at benchmarking and be able to have people have the same setup. So if somebody is including their alumni site in their quote-unquote campus, in their property, and somebody isn't, you're going to end up with all kinds of different phase metrics. So really the most valuable thing that you can do is get your analytics set up and look at yourself specifically year over year. Year over year, especially in higher ed, because it's just the long annual process we go through every year, the cyclical nature of the buying cycle. It's really important that you can look at last February versus this February, versus you wouldn't want to look at, okay, here's this week versus a random week during spring break, right? So if you're doing benchmarking, you can be your own best friend there, and it's probably best to make sure that you're making those big leaps and bounds. Let's see. Okay, how do you convince clients that the numbers are true? We've had meetings with clients who said, I can't believe these numbers. They can't be right. What's the best response? Oh, that's a tough one. That's a hard one to try to figure out exactly how to do that. But if you can explain to them how you're finding the numbers. If you're looking at page views, I mean, that's probably going to be, okay, I don't believe these numbers are page views. Yes, there's always going to be a little bit of error. It's just a machine. It's just a little bit of code. It's not going to be 100% perfect. But my goodness, it's as close as any digital analytics can get. So numbers like page views and bounce rates and things like that are going to be true. Like as true as true can be. When you're looking at things like maybe conversion rates and those sorts of things that might be a little bit more complicated and a little bit more confusing in that conversation, I find that really walking them through exactly how you have it set up and exactly how things are working and empowering them to feel like, yep, I understand this and it's not as scary as it seems can be really helpful in that conversation. If you have a specific set of numbers, let me know that they don't believe are true, but for the most part, I mean, it's as close can be, unless, of course, you have some really wacky setup with subdomains that aren't getting tracked and that sort of thing, which is why we go through that setup process. What else do we have?
Somebody asked if they could delete a goal.
Oh.
And short answer, no, but you can mark it as inactive. And I guess so. You probably also want to be careful about, you've got a limit of 20 goals per profile, but you want to make sure that if you do have goals you don't like, that you don't repurpose them, because that can get really fuzzy data. It's not a good practice. So just have a clear strategy, I guess, when you're starting out, and make sure that these are important goals to you. And then if you want to stop tracking something, you just mark it as inactive.
And really, to add on to that, you remember we looked at the different audiences and how each audience has their own kind of set of goals. I really like to break out a different view for each audience you're working with. So this helps you, because like Michael said, you only have 10 goals per view. So in order to get more goals and have more flexibility, if you're breaking it out for let's say my alumni, we want them to subscribe to our newsletter. Maybe we want them to click on a couple of buttons that we have event tagged that say they're coming to an event, right? So I wouldn't necessarily want those two goals messing up conversion rates with my undergraduate admissions apply button click. So by breaking them into different views, goals are at the view level. You create your goals at the view level. So by breaking them into different views, you have more goals to work with, and you're not going to run into a problem where you run out. And you also have really nice, clean conversion rates for each audience type. Good question. Can you merge 3 or 4 websites into one set of stats? The answer to that is yes. Remember we talked about maybe you have a microsite that is alumnirelations.edu, or it's a completely different website, a completely different domain. If you want to put your tracking code on that and say that these websites all play nicely together and that they're part of one campus, yeah, you can do that. You just place the code on those as well. Check to see if it's referring. You might need to add it to that list of excluded referrals. But yeah, there's lots of instances where you would want to do that. I think that the bigger question, not can you do it, but the bigger question that you guys will probably face is, do you want to do it, right? So you're going to end up basically saying, do I want my alumni site to be in the same bucket and tracked all together with my admission site? It's going to be different for every group. Here's a question I would ask you. Do you want to see referral traffic from your alumni site to your admission site? Does that matter to you? Or is it more valuable to know that somebody came from an email to your alumni site and then also came to your admission site? So it's about where you put that kind of fence around your campus, whether you want to see the referral traffic from building to building, or whether you want to kick it out and see how they got to campus in the first place. So that's probably what I'd consider there. All right, other questions? We have one here. This is a common problem where we're seeing 2 versions of the same page, and usually this is something that has to do with your CMS, right? So maybe your CMS is actually creating 2 versions of the same page. So this is another one that can sometimes be a symptom more than an actual issue, right? So it's an issue because you're reporting It kind of sucks. You can't see what's going on. It's not rolled up. You have to add numbers together. Nobody likes that. But it's a symptom of something going on in your CMS too, which means that there are different versions of that same page. So I'd start there. From an SEO perspective, you really don't want to have a bunch of versions of the same page created by a CMS that's adding slashes or, you know, in this example, landing page. We see this a ton with index.asp or something like that. So go start with the CMS and see if you can figure out how to make only one page per page. That's the most critical thing. What it's doing from an SEO perspective is it's creating something called duplicate content. And that duplicate content, basically, Google, the little Google bot out there, is looking at it, reading the page and saying, this has exactly the same copy on it as this page over here. I don't know which one of these pages to rank, so I might not rank either one of them. So from an SEO perspective, it's definitely a dangerous road to get down. But from an analytics perspective, you can do a couple of different things. There's, you can go in and actually do some filtering and rewrite these pages. You can rewrite the URLs with custom filters at the view level. Another thing that's really valuable and is actually really new is called content grouping. And so what you can do with this is it lets you create some rules. And there's 3 different ways to implement it, but easiest is to create rules and say, any page that has admissions in the page title, I'm going to add a little tag on top of and consider this as an admissions group. What this does is it gives you some kind of role that seamlesses data, so even though you might have some different variations of the same page in your report, you can look at all of your admission pages together versus all of your alumni pages, or even deep dive further down into look at all your landing pages or your index pages, that sort of thing. So there's some really cool tools you can use there. Other questions? We're getting ready to wrap up here. Like I mentioned, we've recorded this session. It'll be out there on the website. Michael and my emails and Twitter are right here. So if you have follow-up questions, I know some of this stuff can be really particular to a unique situation. So you might be sitting there going, how do I even ask this question? Follow up with us. We'd be happy to chat with you for a little bit. And yeah, be sure to sign up for our upcoming webinar with Brenda Harms. And we've really, really enjoyed our time. Thanks for the great questions.